Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for sticking this one out and sticking around for the legislative panel here today. This year, we've got 6 senators that have agreed to come up and sit here and give us a little insight as to what they're thinking about when they think about renewables in Nebraska and how to move things forward. Of course, Senator McAllister and Senator Kolowski have been in this arena for quite a while. Some of the other senators, Senator Quick's been around a little longer. But then we've got Senator Brandt and Senator DeBoer and Senator Dorn that are just really getting started into these issues and everything else. So they're kind of the new vanguard coming up, and so it'll be good to hear what they have to say and what they think about the issue. First of all, I hope everybody's enjoying the conference. I just want to say thank you for being a part of this. It's always great to see the familiar faces every year when we come back, and thanks again. We very much appreciate it. So how we'll do this is I'm going to give each senator about 3 minutes or so to kind of say hi, let you know who they are and what their issues and what their thoughts are as they think about renewables. And then probably what we'll do is we'll turn it over to you guys. And if you guys don't have any questions, then I've got a few made up that we'll get to. So with that, I'll let you guys, who wants to go first?
Senator Myron Dorn. I was elected last year in November, so went through the first year of session in the legislature this year. Lived down by Adams, about 30 miles south of Lincoln here. Was on the Gage County Board for 8 years. Part of being on a county board, you deal with a lot of these, I call it renewable energy situations. We did have a wind farm while I was on the board come in down in southern Gage County, Jefferson County. So we dealt with that. We also dealt with, we had zoning regulations that came into our county in the late 90s, early 2000. We established those before I was on the board, and we updated our wind farm energy regulations. That is quite a process to go through. You have a lot of public hearings, you have a lot of comment from a lot of people. Took about 1.5 years to really dwell into that and go over the issues. Found out that there's a lot of counties in the state that don't have any, I shouldn't say a lot of counties, I think 11 or something, John probably knows, that don't have any regulations. So as you come up to the legislature, you deal with a lot of these same issues. What is an issue for establishing the wind farms or regulations or all of those things. You get to visit with a lot of, I call lobbyists, a lot of lawyers. You get to visit with a lot of the other senators about what is going on or what our state is looking at or what would be good for our state or what would be good for renewable energies. What would also we need to have to what I call protect the rights of people that maybe aren't so interested in having this type of stuff. You get to look at all those and look at all those aspects or whatever. John Hansen over here has been a very valuable resource. He's been, when we went through the county board, he was a very, very valuable resource and still is. So looking forward to some of the comments. I know especially John here. John's been around. John's a very good proponent of renewable energies and some of the other comments.
Thank you for having me here today. My name is Tom Brandt. I represent District 32, which is Fillmore Thayer, Jefferson, Salina, and southwestern Lancaster County. By profession, I'm a farmer. And by that very nature, I hedge my bet on a lot of things. And renewables allow us to hedge our bet. Historically, we've had coal, gas, and nuclear. And now we can bring in wind, solar, hydro. And in my district, you may not think of this as a renewable, but at the Hallam Power Plant, Monolith is building a state-of-the-art carbon black plant. Well, what does that have to do with renewables? They produce hydrogen. That hydrogen will replace half of the coal at the Hallam plant. It's only a mile away. And this is a state-of-the-art project. This is the kind of project we need in Nebraska. The capital formation is to be here in Nebraska. We brought a company from California that brought 40 high-paying jobs to Nebraska. They're going to spend over $100 million on this. When we do renewables, I would like to see if the batteries look like that's going to be the next thing. We need a battery manufacturer here. It would have been great if we had a windmill manufacturer here. I want to see These jobs, not just construction jobs in Nebraska, I want to see manufacturing jobs. I want to see us invest in the state of Nebraska and manufacture and export these technologies to other states so that everybody in this state can benefit from that. So I guess I'm always sort of in favor, as a farmer also, high risk, high reward. So let's go ahead and take some chance on some stuff and go forward here in the state of Nebraska. And with that, here you go, John.
Oh, thank you. Well, this is my 4th conference, and just in those 4 years, the topics have changed radically. 4 years. You know, John Hanson's question this morning, what's going to change in 10 years? And we can't even predict what this industry is going to be like in 10 years. We talked about disruptive technologies. And I would contend that the battery technology is a disruptive technology. Distributed generation is going to change this business too. So we can't predict what this is going to look like in 10 years, and I contend that 3, 4, 5 years, it's going to change remarkably as well. I got a lot out of the Holt County presentation this morning, talking about the desirability of renewable energy for counties, landowners, and schools. And that was a great presentation. We need to carry that message out to more counties because that is the way to go, and I think it's going to ultimately change Nebraska for the better.
Good afternoon. I'm Dan Quick. I represent District 35 in Grand Island. And for those of you that don't know much about me, I worked for the Grand Island Utilities, the city utilities, for 28 years. And it was a great opportunity for me to learn a lot about power generation and how it works for the state of Nebraska. City of Grand Island has done a great job of adding renewables to their portfolio. They have, of course, they have coal, they have natural gas, they have wind, and then they just have a megawatt of community solar that they put in. And I can tell you, working for public power, for me, I took a lot of pride in the work that we did at our utility. And we tried to do the best job we could to provide our ratepayers with affordable and reliable power. And I think renewables have allowed us to do that. The Southwest Power Pool has been vital for Nebraska to be able to add renewables to the state of Nebraska, and so our consumers can have that product. And I think that's going to be important in the future as we add more renewables, as more community solar maybe comes into play. I think really community solar will have a big impact for a lot of communities. You see where a utility can put in, or a community can put in a larger solar unit, provide all the infrastructure so that ratepayers can have the opportunity to purchase that power and not have to put in all the infrastructure. It gets a little expensive for each homeowner to try to put that on their home when you can have maybe a chance to buy that on a community rate. So I think that'll be important for the future. We look at maybe what happens with net metering. I actually think rural broadband is going to be important for the rural areas as far as adding, like you look at some of the new technology that's coming out. It's going to be important for these power districts to have the broadband access. So with that, I'll turn it over to...
I'm Rick Kalowski, Senator from District 31, and that's Millard and the Elkhorn area in Omaha. My own background is one of in education, 41 years in public education. The last 15 years of that time period was the first principal of Millard West High School, and we're very proud of the school district and very proud of the neighborhoods that we have within that district. Our issues are not foreign to anything that you've heard from all the people that have spoke thus far on the podium this afternoon. The people in the Millard area, great density, and also very, very concerned and highly involved in their public schools. And so we look at that as far as the the activity and the potential that we have for having people back us and work with the state senators and those in the region on these issues becomes extremely important in the Omaha area. The items that were listed here on the state senators panel today, as I've listened this afternoon throughout this day, one of the key issues for me is the battery power issue. It seems like we've had great growth in the use of those batteries on vehicles, trucks, cars, and other vehicles that can have really a powerful impact on us. Yet we don't seem to have a concerted effort to try to make them better, quicker, in a different way than we have with other things. I think we're missing something there, and I look forward to the discussions that we will have on battery power, battery storage, all those things that go with the areas that we are concerned with. I'm a big fan of wind power and solar, sun power, and water power as far as that goes. My own background is two terms, 8 years with the NRD in the Omaha area, 1 4-year term with the learning community, and 8 years now as a senator with this is the 8th year coming up. So I look forward to working with these good folks on the table here and look forward to the topics we'll be having. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Wendy DeBoer. I represent District 10, which is northwest Omaha and the small town of Bennington and the surrounding areas. I am interested in discussing renewables for so many reasons. Obviously the environmental impacts, but also as I look at the long-term economic development of Nebraska. And I say, we have a crisis right now in property taxes. What could we do to expand our property tax base? Well, what do we have a lot of? We have a lot of wind, we have a lot of sun, we have some water, right? So one of the things that I think we can really look at is the way in which some of these technologies can help expand our economic outlook into the future, to provide a broadening of the utilization of our natural resources. So I think it's really important to look at how that happens, so that we're not just doing this from a it's the right thing to do perspective, which it is, but also from how does this help everyone. So that's sort of my interest.
Awesome, great, thank you so much. Like I said, I do have a few questions, but I'd much rather turn it over to you folks and give you the opportunity to ask the questions that you want to hear first. But if you guys don't have anything, I can fall back to my boring questions I have right here. So who's going to be first?
The question related to the state of Wyoming creating an infrastructure committee or a body that dealt with that, and the question related to expanding transmission lines in Nebraska to export some of the surplus energy that we have. And I think SPP, in effect, is doing that when they expand their footprint going west. And that's a pretty good population base going west, so I'm hopeful that the expansion will help us sell some of that surplus energy that we have in the state. There's one more change I'd like to mention, and that's the changing nature of the corporate customers that are in the state. And we see the data centers demanding a certain amount of renewable energy, and that's changing situation in Nebraska. And also, maybe more importantly, is the governance structure of these public utilities, because you see environmentally minded utility directors coming on, and they're pushing the management to utilize more renewable energy. I see a couple right out in the audience now that I can say are doing that very well. So I think I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, does anybody else have anything to say? Senator Quick.
Well, and I can add that, with the R line that would come across too, having that second transmission line across Nebraska would be so important for the state, for any transportation of any of the energy that's generated in the state of Nebraska. You have a weather event that takes out the transmission line that's there presently, and you don't have a secondary transmission line. I think it's important to have that secondary transmission line. So.
Do you see any upcoming legislation for either PACE R or PACE C on the horizon? And would you think that PACE would live alongside community solar?
Well, I know we had some legislation a couple years ago on PACE that's sitting out there, and I'm not sure if you're familiar with that or not, but I would think that that's something that if you'd get with some of these guys, they'd be able to help you out and look into that moving forward. But I'm sure they'd help you find the answer to that. Other questions? The question is, one of you mentioned water, and what were your ideas there?
Well, I wasn't mentioning it with respect to energy production necessarily. I'm not sure that we have a lot of potential for that, but I think maybe over there was.
I've heard politicians in the state talk about water resources, especially on the eastern end where the vast majority of the population is in the Omaha and the Lincoln area. And they've talked about damming up the river and making a huge lake all the way from the Omaha area all the way down to Lincoln. Now you could look at that and go, that's crazy. Why would we want to do that? But in reality, there's a tremendous amount of impact that would come with that would be beneficial to the state as a whole. Now that's one item that I know in my past history I've listened to politicians talk about and try to talk a number of people into something like that. So we have water resources, and it's very important for us. But we also have the power of the sun, and something that every state does not have, and that our last speaker that was up here and before that, and that's the wind power. We are blessed with wind power and solar power compared to all the states around us. And if we don't capitalize on that and utilize that as a leverage to what we're doing and where we're going, we're missing out on something. And I've talked with people across the state and fellow senators in different situations, and those who don't want that to happen can't give me many reasons as to why. I'll just drop it right there.
I was very fortunate this summer to tour the canals in the central part of the state and the power plants. What an amazing feat of engineering for something built in the 30s and the 40s. If you've ever been through McConaughey and to just put your hand on that turbine and feel the power of that water coming through there. I doubt we could even build something like that today because of environmental rules. I had some lobbyists in my office earlier this afternoon. Of all the production of energy in the state of Nebraska, water has the lowest avoided cost. So we need to keep that in mind. And John here reminded me, we also toured Gerald Gentleman out there. Just because it's a coal plant, it uses a tremendous amount of water. So, water isn't just for hydro. Water is used in other forms of energy production in the state of Nebraska.
One of the statistics is annual state water consumption savings by using wind energy is 3.5 billion gallons. So some of those conventional plants use an enormous amount of water.
And I was just going to add on to what Senator Brandt said about, I was on that tour as well, and when they talked about the timing of the water for not only just for the Gerald Gentleman's plant, but also timing of the water for the hydro, for irrigation, for recreation, for environmental use, it's really impressive. So if you ever have the opportunity to go on a tour like that, it's an amazing tour. I've also been on the tour where I got to go up to Columbus and see their hydro for loop power, and it's pretty amazing.
Okay, so one question that I have, I'll get to you in just a second. One question that I have is Senator Dorn talked about protecting the rights of folks, both that are in favor of renewable development as well as those that may not be, maybe opponents. So that coupled with the fact that we really don't know where we're going to go in the next 10 years, how do you guys, as senators in the legislature, make sure that you're doing the things that give the locals the tools to protect themselves in those arenas? Whoever wants it.
I'll start or whatever. I know earlier this afternoon we were visiting, some of us were out in the hallway, and there's a bill, I think there's a bill out there right now that will help protect those rights, or have that, it's stuck in committee 4-4. Part of what we do is we need to have the conversation amongst ourselves and visit and come to a consensus so that we do help lead this state down this right path or whatever. We need to make sure that we can work together as senators, that we can listen to the people and hear their voice and yet make those tough decisions. I know we had one bill on the power line, or the brewer had a bill with the eminent domain, and that brought about a lot of discussion this last year, a lot of really good discussion on the floor, and some, I call it very boisterous discussion or whatever. But we do that, and we get to hear from constituents, we get to visit with people, and we get to make sure we make the right plan and do the right bills and pass the right bills for the state of Nebraska going forward, so that there is a path where we can go down this and everybody knows where we can go.
Now, the process we currently employ to deploy a wind farm, you have to go through over 50 different tests, state and federal. But ultimately, it's that local county that makes the decision. And they can establish their own regulations, siting regulations, distance regulations, those kind of decisions ultimately go to the counties. And I think that's a good thing, because they have the best feel for their constituents. The state doesn't, but the counties do.
I think, we all know we're at a moment of change where we're really trying to do a transition, or looking at the face of, is this transition happening? How are we going to go about doing it? And so some of the rules aren't written already. But we do have rules with how we treat landowners in general. We have rules about how we take care of each other in general. We have laws that say, if I encumber your property in a particular way, this is what I'm supposed to do. We just passed one again this year. So I think when we're sort of writing the book for how do we go forward now as a state, we have to kind of look to the precedent of some of the other ways in which we interact with each other and try to kind of put our passions aside for a minute and say, if this weren't wind energy, how would we react? On both sides. If this weren't wind energy, but this were some other change that was happening to the land. And I think when we do that, when we try and look at it dispassionately like that, we can see that there are concerns that people have, and we should make sure that we have as transparent a process as possible. And I think that's one of the most important things going forward, is making sure that we're talking with people and being transparent.
Yeah, I was just going to say that really for any legislation, it doesn't even have to be for renewables or anything like that. I mean, any legislation, you need to have everybody at the table. You need to talk to people. You need to, and that's not just amongst the senators, but that's with, say if it's for a net metering bill, you want to be talking to the utilities, to the vendors, to the consumers. So you have all this information that you can put together, and then you all have to work together. Not everybody's going to be happy maybe with the end result, but you're going to hopefully you can come to some compromise to bring some form of legislation forward. And so I just think it's extremely important for everybody to have a voice in the process and to be present when you're talking about whether it's an issue or whether you need legislation or not. And so just getting everybody at the table is really extremely important.
So you're referring to the dealer's law right now that's in place, that in order to sell a car, a manufacturer can't sell it directly to a consumer but has to go through a dealership. There's, in the Transportation Committee, which I happen to sit on, there is a bill sponsored by Senator Vargas that would provide a narrow exception to that rule. And I couldn't tell you which way it was going to go. The thing that was interesting to me was when I talked to the folks at Tesla, they said that they are changing their business model, so they may or may not want to actually locate a dealership here. So I don't know what's going to happen with that. So that's a piece. It also prevents anyone from, so they would like to be able to offer direct maintenance and repair services. So we're working on that. So the answer is that's in the Transportation Committee right now. If you're interested in that one, write to the members of the Transportation Committee. You can write to me. But what Tesla said to me was that if they bring a dealership to a state, they also sell their batteries and their solar panels and different things like that. So that was one of the reasons I was most interested in bringing them to the state, is because they won't just bring the solar panels and the batteries. They want to bring it with their car dealership in order to make the numbers work for them. So that's a very interesting question. So that's kind of where that's at. It doesn't really answer your question, but that's where we're working on it right now.
Someone earlier in the day talked about in their home having a charging outfit in the garage that would be usable for their electric car that they would be using. And I thought about that because of the creativity that would go into that. And refurbishing my home would take a little work. It's 33 years old and would need some things done to it, but that's the kind of challenges and thinking that we need to have, because there's going to be a lot more motorcycles, small cars, trucks that'll be becoming more battery powered in the future for short distance hauling and travel within a metropolitan area or a work area of some sort. It's about attitudes and opinions many times as to where we are and what we are used to compared to what we would like it to be for the future as the future comes upon us.
Is there any pending or potential legislation pertaining to hydrogen, using hydrogen as a source of energy? Any legislation pending for that?
Do we need legislation?
I don't know.
I mean,
Sort of like the car.
Mike, a lot of our rural constituents think we've got way too many laws already. And it sounds sort of funny, but if the industry can do this without a law, go for it. If you guys can figure out how to do this without coming to the legislature, do it.
The question was retail competition in or out of the state for energy generation. Did you get that? Choose your energy supplier.
Well, I'll start first, and I sure may have a different opinion than some other people. I think we have a pretty good system in place right now with the public that we have, the public utilities that we have. Part of what we, I don't remember what, I'm in appropriations, and part of what we had discussion last year on appropriations was some of the companies that have come into Nebraska, they come in here because we have such a low cost of electricity. We had a company that it was down to between Nebraska and the state of New York. They knew that over the next 20 years, they were so much more money ahead by locating in Nebraska because our cheap cost of electricity. When we're having something that's as successful as we are with what we have, I think we really would have to look hard at it to make considerable changes to it.
I support public power 100%.
I'd say that if reliability and cost was a factor, that might be a consideration. That might be a reason to bring in other energy sources. But I quite agree. I think we've got a pretty good deal in Nebraska, and why break it if it ain't broke?
I grew up in the state of Illinois, and we had to deal with Commonwealth Edison in northern Illinois, in Chicagoland area. I'd never go back. I'd never go back to that. It was chaos and extremely expensive.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I lived in Syracuse, New York, and in order to keep my apartment at 62 degrees in the wintertime, I paid $300 a month. So I'm very happy with public power.
Yeah, Senator McAllister and I just went to a clean energy conference out in Colorado. And so I know we had senators from and representatives from a lot of other states there. And Nebraska is the only one that's all public power. And I can tell you, talking to some of those senators, when they have investor-owned utilities, sometimes they're not always looking at what's best for the consumer, but what's also best for their bottom line and what's also best for the stockholders of whatever company that they have. Not knocking investor-owned utilities, but I also worked in public power. I know the work that we did at our utility was to try to provide the most reliable, affordable power that we could do, and I think that's what's most important to our citizens of Nebraska.
They just wanted to know if anybody is sponsoring a bill that pertains to wind or solar or renewables for this session coming up.
I think you probably have to ask Senator Brewer. Tony?
We'll be around later.
I might have some.
One more question. Anybody else? Yes, sir, over there.
With the large scale solar going in on ag ground, what percentage of ag ground has to be converted to solar before it becomes commercial for investment to change the tax structure?
Who wants that one, guys? Can we say that's yet to be determined, I would guess? You may have just found the bill. Does anybody have any?
I don't think you change something just because you plant a couple of windmills out in a field. That doesn't just roll over to become besides agricultural land. So I haven't heard that. I haven't heard that expressed as an issue or a negative from any of the wind turbine areas or anything else that's happened that I know of.
Well, the wind turbine, you take an acre, you could have a whole acre go to solar, and there wouldn't be any ag ground left, is what I'm thinking.
I think right now you're probably referring to the one here in Lancaster County, and I've seen some of I mean, it's not in my district, it's right north of it, but seen some of the drawings and the amount of ag land that it's going to take. I call it out of production, basically, with those solar panels on there. You also have to realize, though, that that does go in front of the county. It's the county's responsibility, but part of what it takes away is now the property taxes or whatever on the ag land, but there is a tax system set up so that it's taxing the solar. And I don't know enough of the difference between those two or how each of those are factored in. It's just like, the wind turbines. Gage County down there, when we went in with Gage County with those, that was preset by preset by the state, so it went on the nameplate capacity of the wind tower, and they knew exactly the dollar amount that each one of those was going to bring in. And they still do that every year. They tell them what it's going to bring in or whatever down there. And I'm not real sure, haven't been since it's not in your district, sometimes you don't go and look at that or whatever. But I do agree with you in one part is that when you looked at the drawing and the map, what they had in the paper, it took multiple pieces of ground out of production by the amount of the size of that scope, the size and the scope of that project. But like I said, again, it does remove some property taxes on there, but there are other taxes, and I don't know how that's taxed. I'm sure a lot of people do or whatever, but it doesn't just get rid of 100% of that tax and take it completely out of I call it the structure.
Okay.
Very good. Well, folks, we've made it to 5 o'clock. You've survived the first day of the conference. I think we should give a good round of applause for the senators up here. Thank you very much.
Thank you.